She replaced her cousin at the airport pickup counter and picked up the wrong CEO. The early evening crowd at Los Angeles International Airport was thick with movement. Families reunited, travelers rushing, signs raised high in the air. Emma Sanchez adjusted the cap on her head, nervously checking her phone again. The name blinked on her screen. Pickup for Blake C. Terminal B, arrivals, 5:45 p.m. She exhaled and glanced around. Her first solo airport pickup since filling in for her cousin's driving gig. She was a design student, not a driver, but she needed the extra cash and her cousin swore this one would be simple. Just a quick airport pickup, the guy's name is Blake something, he should be easy to spot. Scanning the crowd, her eyes settled on a tall man standing alone near the curb, duffel bag slung over one shoulder. He wore jeans, a navy jacket, and sunglasses, despite the dimming sky. There was something self-contained and calm about him. Emma hesitated, then approached. "Excuse me," she said, trying to sound professional. "Are you Blake C.?" The man turned, removing his sunglasses. His expression was unreadable for a moment. Then he smiled slightly. "I am Blake, and I am definitely in need of a ride." Emma nodded quickly. "Great, right this way." She helped him with his bag and led him to the car. Once inside, she tapped the navigation system and asked, "Heading to downtown?" "Sure," he replied, settling back in his seat. "Let's see where the road takes us." They pulled out of the terminal. Emma kept her eyes on the road, her grip tight on the steering wheel. She stole a glance at him through the rearview mirror. There was something polished in the way he sat, the quiet confidence in his posture. He did not talk much, which suited her fine. She was nervous enough already. 10 minutes in, she checked her phone again, swiping through messages, and froze. A new message from her cousin. "Hey, your client Blake C. says he's still at Terminal B. You're late?" Emma's stomach dropped. She glanced at the man in the back seat, then back to her phone. There was no mistake. She had picked up the wrong Blake. "Oh my God," she whispered under her breath. She pulled over onto a quiet side road and turned around. I'm so sorry," she stammered. "I think I picked up the wrong person. You're not the Blake I was supposed to drive." The man raised an eyebrow but remained perfectly composed. "Really?" "Yes," she said, flushing with embarrassment. "I was meant to pick up someone named Blake C., and I thought, well, you matched the description. But I just got a message that the real passenger is still waiting at the terminal. I'll call someone else to get him. I can drop you off wherever you need." He tilted his head. "You're a student, aren't you?" Emma blinked. How did you know?" "Your bag." He nodded toward the backpack in the front seat, design sketches peeking out. "And the nervous energy." She gave a short, embarrassed laugh. "Yeah, interior design major. I'm just filling in for my cousin. This was supposed to be easy." The man smiled again. "It's all right. I'm not in a rush." She quickly dialed her friend Kara, who worked the same driving shift. "Kara, can you head to Terminal B? There's a passenger named Blake C. still waiting. I picked up the wrong guy." Once she confirmed Kara was on the way, she turned to the man in the back. "I'm really sorry. I'll take you anywhere you need." He waved a hand, still smiling. "Honestly, I'm just arriving from London after an exhausting month. A little detour might be exactly what I needed." She glanced at him, surprised. "You're very calm for someone who just got hijacked by accident." "Well," he said, leaning forward slightly, "if you're willing to chauffeur a lost CEO, I'm willing to be a cooperative passenger." Emma blinked. "CEO?" He held out his hand. "Blake Carter. Nice to meet you." She took it slowly, the name ringing faint bells in her memory. It sounded familiar, but she could not place it. "And you are?" "Emma Sanchez." "Pleasure's mine, Emma. Let's go for a drive." As she merged back into traffic, she could not help but glance at him again. There was something oddly comforting about his presence, even though everything had just gone off-screen. For the first time since arriving at the airport, she smiled. Sometimes, the wrong pickup might just lead to the right beginning. The drive from LAX to downtown Los Angeles stretched out under a golden California dusk. Emma glanced at the GPS. Blake Carter, CEO. Definitely not the Blake she had been meant to pick up, but he had insisted on continuing the ride like nothing was wrong. She cleared her throat, nervous but curious. "So, London, huh? Business trip?" "Something like that," Blake replied, watching the palm trees blur past his window. "I needed a change of scenery, some breathing room." Emma smiled faintly. "I can relate. I do this job to escape my real job, or rather, my real future." He leaned forward slightly, intrigued. "What do you actually do?" "I'm studying interior design," she said, glancing at him in the mirror. "Final year. Between classes, I work part-time to pay rent. Someday I want to open my own design studio. You know, create spaces that feel like home, even when people forget what that feels like." Blake raised an eyebrow. "That's very specific." Emma laughed. "Yeah, well, when you live in a 400-square-foot shared apartment with creaky floors and weird plumbing, you start imagining better spaces. I sketch a lot, dream even more." He was silent for a second. "What do you love about it?" She blinked. "Design?" "Yeah." She paused, then said, "When someone walks into a room and suddenly breathes easier, not because of the furniture or the colors, but because the space lets them be themselves. That's the magic I want to create." Blake studied her through the mirror. That was not something he heard often in pitch meetings or creative boardrooms. There was no pretense in her voice, just belief. As they reached the traffic light near Broadway, Emma pointed at a faded Art Deco building across the street. "See that one? Built in 1928. The original tiles are still there under that ugly modern cladding. If I had a team and the budget, I'd strip it down and restore it." Blake looked, truly looked. Her eye for detail was sharp, noticing not just structures, but soul. When they arrived at the hotel, Emma stepped out to help with his bag. As she popped the trunk and bent down, a folded sheet of paper slipped from her canvas backpack. She did not notice. She was already waving goodbye. "Thanks for being cool about the mix-up," she said with a small, apologetic grin. "And sorry again." Before he could respond, she was already walking briskly back to her car. Blake lifted his duffel bag and caught sight of the paper on the ground. He bent, picked it up. It was a sketch, a stunning one. Black ink, warm graphite shading, a modular shelving unit that folded seamlessly into a curved wall niche. The lines were fluid, alive. He turned it over. The bottom corner read, "Horizon Concept, ES." His pulse stilled. That name. 3 years ago, he had attended a design submission auction for a collection called Horizon. An anonymous entry had caught his eye, just like this. He had bought it quietly through a private acquisition to keep it from being commercialized before it was ready. But somehow, one of the collaborating agencies had broken contract and resold the concept under a flashier name. His legal team was still untangling the mess. Blake stared at the sketch again. The lines were identical. The signature, E.S., Emma Sanchez? No, it could not be, and yet it made sense. Her words in the car, her dreams, her eye for detail, her tone when talking about lost spaces and breathing room. He folded the paper gently and slid it into the inside pocket of his jacket. Not yet, he told himself, not now, but soon. Blake sat alone in his hotel suite, the sketch still in his hand, unfolded across the glass table. It was unmistakable. The Horizon design, her design. He opened his laptop, fingers flying across the keys as he accessed the company's proprietary archives. 3 years ago, the Horizon collection had been submitted to his company through an intermediary agency. The submission was anonymous, with only an ES as the original designer's initials. At the time, the piece had stood out so vividly that he had approved a silent purchase, requesting the design to be preserved until it found the right home. But that home had been violated. His company had outsourced prototype development to a firm in New York, Vinton Designs, and Vinton's creative director had since rebranded the Horizon concept under a new name, claiming it as a product of his team. That name on the internal agreement jumped out at Blake now like a punch to the chest. Caleb Vinton. The same name on the signature of the licensing paperwork. The same Caleb who, according to Emma's quick mention in the car, was her ex. Blake leaned back, stunned. The truth was in front of him. Emma had been the original artist, and someone close to her, had stolen her vision. 2 days later, Blake sent Emma an email under the pretense of needing help reviewing feedback from clients for a showroom mock-up. "I could use a creative eye," he wrote simply. "No pressure, just a pair of fresh lenses." Emma hesitated when she received it. She had not expected to see Blake again after the strange airport mix-up, but something about his tone, calm, curious, respectful, made her feel like she owed herself this moment. They met at the entrance of the International Interior Expo. The event was vast, filled with towering structures of glass and wood, projection lights, models of furniture so sleek they looked futuristic. Emma walked beside Blake, equal parts nervous and enthralled. He guided her silently past several booths until they reached one displaying minimalist shelving units, curved partitions, and an open modular room layout labeled as the Eclipse Collection. Emma stopped breathing. The lines, the curvature, the foundational concept. It was hers. Even the textured layering detail. Something she had once scribbled on a napkin after watching sunlight scatter across cracked pavement was replicated here in brushed steel and warm oak. She stared at it as if watching someone else's life play out in front of her. Her voice, when it came, was barely above a whisper. "This is mine." Blake did not speak. He just stood beside her, watching her face. Emma's shoulders stiffened. "He told me," she said slowly, "that idea was impractical, that no client would pay for it, that I needed to stop dreaming like a student and start thinking like a worker." Her eyes burned, but she kept staring. "He said no one would remember something that simple." Blake exhaled through his nose quietly. "I remembered." She turned to him, startled. "I bought that design," he said, 3 years ago, through an anonymous auction. I did not know it was yours, not until that day in the car." Emma took a step back, the world spinning slightly under her feet. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I wanted to be sure," he said. "And because I knew, once you saw it with your own eyes, you would know what I know." She turned away, blinking quickly. Later, in the car, she sat in silence. The exhibition's glow flickered through the windows, casting patterns on the windshield like broken glass. Blake sat beside her, saying nothing. She spoke without looking at him. "I gave him everything I had, my work, my belief. I thought if I stayed quiet I would be safe." Her voice cracked. "I was wrong." Blake reached forward, gently turning off the engine. The world outside quieted. "No," he said softly. "You were just too kind to see cruelty coming." Emma's lips trembled. She wiped at her eyes and whispered, "What do I do now?" Blake looked straight ahead. "That depends. Do you want justice, or do you want your name back?" She turned her head slowly, meeting his gaze. "I want both," she said. The light in Emma's apartment was dim, a single desk lamp illuminating the sketches spread out across the table. She had not slept much since the exhibition. Her phone had buzzed a few times, messages from old classmates, one even from a former professor who had seen the photos Blake had discreetly forwarded after the event, but she had not answered any of them. She was frozen between shame and confusion, caught in the weight of being seen. A soft knock on the door startled her. She opened it to find a brown envelope lying on the floor, no name, no label. Inside was a sheet of old, crinkled paper, lined, torn at the corner. A sketch, clearly drawn by hand. It showed a small, strange concept for an adjustable desk that folded into a chair. The lines were wobbly. The scale was off. It was far from professional. But at the bottom corner, there was a note, written in the same steady, elegant handwriting Blake used on company letters. "I once thought this was useless. Someone believed in me anyway, so I kept designing. Today, I believe in you." Emma blinked fast. Her throat tightened. Underneath the sketch was another sheet, a scanned email thread from 3 years ago, the anonymous submission of her design to the auction where Blake had first purchased it. It bore the initial ES and a timestamp. Proof. But Blake had not sent it to pressure her, just to show her the past was real and that she had always mattered. Later that night, they met in the quiet corner of a park cafe where Blake had reserved a table under his name. He sat, without pretense, in a worn coat that looked too modest for someone who ran a company. He stirred his tea slowly, and finally said, "When I was just starting out, I had no connections, no money, and no reason to think I could make it. But there was one teacher who told me something that stuck. If you do not speak the truth, someone else will speak it for you, and they will twist it." Emma looked at him, unsure what to say. "I am not asking you to fight," he added quietly. "I am just asking you to stop apologizing for having a voice." Her fingers trembled slightly as she clutched the sketch he had given her. "I do not want people to think I am bitter or that I am only trying to claim credit." "You are not claiming anything," he said. "You are reclaiming what was always yours." The next morning, she woke up before dawn. Her hands hovered over her tablet for several minutes before she finally opened a blank post. Slowly, deliberately, she uploaded the original sketch of the Horizon series, then another image. The initial napkin sketch she had photographed before it faded. Then a third, a video clip of her discussing light flow and modular furniture from 2 years ago, recorded during a class project. She did not name anyone. She did not point fingers. She just wrote, "3 years ago, I sketched this while sitting on the floor of my apartment, dreaming of rooms that felt like healing spaces. I submitted it anonymously because I was scared. I stopped drawing when someone told me it was not good enough. But yesterday, I saw my idea on display under someone else's name. I am not here to argue. I just want to share what it looked like when it came from the heart." She hit post. The hours passed in a blur. By evening, her story had been shared over 1,000 times. Comments flooded in. Design students, architects, even strangers, saying how her vulnerability inspired them. Some recognized the style. A few industry voices chimed in, asking questions. She received messages of support, even from professionals she had once admired from afar. Emma sat curled on her couch, overwhelmed. A message popped up. It was from Blake. "You spoke your truth and no one twisted it." She smiled through her tears, then typed back, "Thank you for reminding me. Silence is not always safe." Blake replied a minute later, "Silence never protected anyone, but honesty, it sets people free." That night, Emma fell asleep for the first time in weeks. Her sketchpad open beside her, not as a burden, but as a promise. The days that followed felt like waves crashing over Emma's chest, relentless and suffocating. Her post had gone viral, just enough to spark attention, but not enough to protect her from the storm that followed. Within 48 hours, the design firm formerly run by her ex-boyfriend issued a formal statement. The claims being circulated online are not only inaccurate, but a blatant attempt to tarnish reputations. The designs in question were developed in-house by a registered creative team. Her inbox exploded. Some messages praised her courage, but others, anonymous, bitter, or deeply personal, called her a liar, a bitter ex, an attention seeker. She stopped checking her messages, stopped answering calls, stopped eating properly. The final blow came when the board of the International Young Designers Competition emailed her. "Given the ongoing controversy, we understand if you wish to withdraw. Please inform us by Friday." She sat in her room staring at the email, fingers hovering over the keyboard, ready to say yes. Withdraw. Disappear. Protect herself from the ugliness. It was raining that day. She had been scheduled to attend a panel hosted by a non-profit architecture group, something she had promised herself she would not miss. But halfway through, she could not bear the curious stares, the whispers, the half-formed smiles of people who were clearly unsure which side of the line she now stood on. She slipped out quietly, coat barely covering her from the downpour, trying to move fast before anyone noticed. Her boots hit a patch of water-slick concrete, and suddenly her feet lost grip. Before she could hit the ground, strong arms caught her. She gasped as Blake's face appeared above her, soaked hair falling into his eyes, concern etched deep in his features. "Easy," he said quietly. "I've got you." They stood together beneath a small concrete awning by the edge of the building. The rain poured hard, just inches away, but here in the shadow of it, it was quiet. Emma said nothing. Neither did Blake. And somehow that was enough. He did not try to offer encouragement or platitudes. He just stood beside her, unmoving, steady, like the way he had shown up from the beginning, without demand, without judgment, without asking for anything in return. She let out a long breath. It trembled, but it was full. That night, she returned home to find a small package slip through her door. Inside was a pair of dark leather gloves, soft, elegant, almost identical to the ones Blake had been wearing the first day they met at the airport. There was a note, handwritten in clean script. When you are driving through a storm, the most important thing is not the road. It is the hands that do not let go of the wheel. She closed her eyes. The next morning, she wrote an email to the design competition. I would like to confirm my participation, not because I want to prove anyone wrong, but because I am finally ready to drive my own story. And when she hit send, something shifted, not just in her inbox, but deep within her chest. Not defiance, not vengeance, control. Her storm had not ended, but now she had gloves to steer through it. The next day was unusually quiet. Emma stayed home, her phone turned over, ignoring notifications. She needed stillness after everything. The public backlash had calmed down, but not in her heart. She still heard the doubt, the voices saying she was only getting attention because of Blake. Around noon, a delivery arrived. A courier handed her a flat, neatly wrapped package. No return address. Just a tag on the twine that said, "You always had value. This is just the world catching up." She opened it slowly. Inside was a printed invoice, yellowed slightly with time. Her hands trembled. It was dated 3 years ago. The header read, "Purchase Confirmation, Private Design Exchange." The buyer, Blake Whitmore. The seller, EM Design. Her breath caught. That was her username. She had used it on a freelance platform during college, terrified of putting her real name on anything. That design, Horizon, she had uploaded it late one night in her dorm room, never expecting it to be noticed, and someone had bought it. No feedback, no questions, just gone. Folded beside the invoice was a note in thick black ink. "You thought the world did not see you, but I did. I kept this as a reminder that brilliance comes even in silence. Now it is time for the world to know your name." Emma stared at the letter until her vision blurred. She thought she had been chosen out of kindness or because Blake felt guilty, but he had believed in her work long before he knew her. It was not a favor. It was respect. The next morning, Emma walked into Blake's new creative studio, his own venture, announced just a week ago, a sleek space in the Arts District, full of warm light and raw materials. Everything about it said, "Build something real." Blake looked up from where he was sketching near the back wall. He set his pencil down and walked over. "Hey," he said gently. "I got your package," Emma said, holding his gaze. "And your message." He waited. She smiled, small but certain. "I am still scared, but not of failing, just of not doing this at all." Blake smiled back. "Then let's start." Her office was not large, but it was hers. A nameplate already waited, Emma Rivera, Creative Director. Taped beneath it, a sticky note in familiar handwriting read, "Not given, earned." That afternoon, Blake gathered the new team, designers, interns, coordinators, and introduced Emma. "This woman changed my entire perspective years ago," he said, voice steady. "She showed me that great ideas do not care where you come from. They just need someone brave enough to share them, and someone honest enough to honor them." Emma blushed but did not look away. This time, she stood taller. After the meeting, Blake found her setting up her workspace. He placed a small box next to her laptop. "What's this?" she asked. "Open it." Inside was a flash drive and a handwritten label. "Horizon. Original files. Yours." Along with it, another note. "You once sold your idea because you thought it was the only way forward. Now you own it, and everything you will build next." Emma looked up at him, her eyes damp. "Thank you," she whispered. He shook his head, his voice soft. "Thank you for not letting the world convince you to stay small." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Blake added, "You do not have to prove anything to anyone anymore, Emma, least of all me. But just so you know, I never chose you out of sympathy. I chose you because long before I saw your face, I saw your mind, and it never let go." Emma's reply came slowly but clearly. "Then let me prove you right." She turned back to her desk and started drafting again, this time not for recognition, not to reclaim anything, but because her ideas mattered. And this studio, this title, this team, was not the end of a painful journey. It was the beginning of one she was finally building on her own terms. Emma's days were busier than ever: meetings, mock-ups, presentations, mentoring junior designers. Her name started showing up in industry forums, articles, even whispers at exhibitions. Who is this girl from nowhere? How did she become Whitmore Studios' rising star? And yet every time someone asked about Blake, she would brush it off with a laugh, a shake of the head, or a redirect to the latest project. Not because she did not feel something, she did, deeply. But there was a quiet wall inside her that whispered, "Careful, do not ruin this with foolish dreams." Blake, for his part, never pushed. He remained steady, a presence that listened more than he spoke, that offered help without conditions. He treated her like an equal, respected her decisions. But Emma noticed things. How he always paused before knocking on her door, even when it was open. How he left extra space for her to walk beside him, never in his shadow. How he never called her his designer, only our creative director. But in the quiet moments, when emails were done and everyone had gone home, Emma would sometimes sit alone at her desk, staring at the city lights, and wonder, could someone like him really want someone like her? Her past still echoed. The old apartment with leaky ceilings, the ramen dinners, the ex who told her dreams were cute but not marketable. She remembered the stares when she first joined the studio, the assumptions, the questions hidden behind polite smiles. How did she get here? One rainy Tuesday, Emma returned from a long client presentation. She dropped her soaked coat on the rack and found a package on her chair. Wrapped simply in brown paper, no name. Inside was a soft leather-bound journal, white, unused, the kind artists rarely buy for themselves because they are too expensive to waste on mistake. Emma flipped to the first page. A single line was written in black ink, careful and deliberate. "I can go far, but I would rather stop if that place has you in it." Her breath caught. She sat down slowly, fingers tracing the letters. There was no signature, no pressure, just a door, gently opened. She held the pen for a long time before she finally wrote back, beneath his words in her own handwriting, "If I go with you, could you slow down a little?" She closed the journal and hugged it to her chest. Blake found it on his desk the next morning. He did not smile right away. He just read the line again, twice, then sat down at his chair and looked out the window. It was still raining, but for the first time in a long while, it felt like something good was beginning, slowly, gently, and with both feet finally stepping into the same direction. The grand hall of the Global Creative Design Center in New York shimmered under soft lights and banners from around the world. It was a night of elegance, of names called and futures changed. But behind the stage, Emma stood quietly, adjusting the sash of her ivory evening gown. Chosen by her team, the dress was simple, modest, and graceful, just like her. She was no longer the girl who had once picked up the wrong man at the airport. Tonight, she was Emma L. Carter, creative director of Redrive Studio, a company that in just 12 months had redefined the industry with human-centered design and sustainable aesthetics. When the host announced her name, the room erupted in applause. Emma stepped onto the stage, her expression calm yet glowing. She approached the microphone, offered a gentle smile, and said, "Thank you. A year ago I thought my dreams lived only in sketchbooks, tucked under my bed, forgotten. That is, until I picked up the wrong person at LAX. Laughter rippled through the room. She continued, her voice steady but warm. There was no fairy tale moment, no lightning bolt, just a man who did not rush to judge me for a mistake. A man who listened to the way I talked about light, structure, and the fear of never being good enough. Her eyes moved gently toward the front row. There he was, Blake Whitmore, in a charcoal tuxedo, watching her with the same quiet pride, he had shown on the very first day he believed in her. People often ask me, what changed everything? I think, it was the moment someone saw worth in me, even when I could not see it myself. The host returned to the stage, inviting her to receive her award, but before she could step forward, Blake stood. He made his way onto the stage with an unassuming grace, holding a rolled-up piece of paper in his hand. The crowd fell silent. Emma tilted her head, slightly amused and confused. "Blake?" He smiled. "No ring, no kneeling, just honesty." He unrolled the paper slowly, revealing a hand-drawn sketch of a house nestled in a forest clearing, sunlight spilling in through a semicircle window, exactly the style she adored. "We drive home," he said softly. "A place for two people to begin again." Emma's breath hitched. She recognized the baselines. The original outlines were hers, but the porch, the lighting fixtures, the stone path, those were Blake's additions. They had created it together, unintentionally, across shared glances and quiet sketches. "You once took me to the wrong hotel," he said, voice tender but sure, "but you helped me find the right destination." The audience chuckled, then fell silent again as Blake stepped closer and gently took her hand. "Emma," he said, with a steadiness that wrapped around her like a promise, "I do not need an assistant. I do not need a rising star. I need someone to walk beside me, not fast, not loud, just steady, so we can build something that lasts." Emma let out a breath, half laugh, half tear, not because she was surprised, but because, finally, everything was exactly where it belonged. She did not answer with words. She stepped forward and embraced him. Right there on stage, under the lights, in front of every camera, every face that had once doubted her, dismissed her, overlooked her. And then, she leaned close, whispering into his ear, "I am ready. Let's go home." They left the stage hand in hand, walking down the long, glowing aisle and into the night, where city lights blurred like stars. As they passed the old corner store where Emma had once taken odd jobs to afford textbooks, she reached into her purse and pulled out a worn, faded receipt. "This," she said, smiling softly, "I thought I would throw this away. But now I know. The most valuable thing on it was never the numbers. It was the gaze of a stranger who chose to stay." Blake's grip tightened around her hand, not as a CEO, not as a man in power, but as someone who had finally found what he had always needed, a home, in her. And this time, they were starting from the right address. If this story stirred your heart, reminded you that even the smallest mistake can lead to the most beautiful turns, and showed you that kindness and quiet strength don't go unnoticed, then this is just the beginning of many stories waiting to reach you. At Soul Stirring Stories, we believe in tales that lift, heal, and remind us of the power of believing in others and in ourselves. If you felt seen in Emma's journey or inspired by Blake's quiet courage, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Your next favorite story, the one that just might change your day or your life, is only one click away. Subscribe to Soul Stirring Stories now, and let every story remind you, love finds a way, especially when it starts with listening.